What if I told you that right now, at this very moment, you're speaking a language you never learned, and reality is listening to every word? Not the language coming out of your mouth. I'm talking about something deeper, something most people broadcast their entire lives without ever realizing they're doing it. It's a frequency, a signal that pulses out from you constantly. And here's the unsettling truth. Whatever's showing up in your life right now, the relationships, the bank account, the opportunities, the setbacks, all of it is reality's direct response to the signal you've been transmitting. Florence Scovel Shinn spent decades decoding this invisible conversation between consciousness and reality. What she discovered wasn't some feel-good philosophy or wishful thinking. She uncovered actual mechanics, specific patterns that explain why one person can work themselves into the ground and barely survive, while another person seems to glide through life with doors opening everywhere they turn. And no, it's not about privilege or connections or being born under the right stars. Think about someone you know personally, maybe a colleague, maybe a family member, who just seems to have things work out for them. They're not necessarily smarter than you. They're definitely not working harder. But somehow, the right people find them. The money shows up when they need it. That job opening appears exactly when they're ready to move. Meanwhile, you're mapping out every detail, preparing for every contingency, hustling until you're exhausted, and it still feels like you're swimming upstream. The gap between these two experiences isn't random. It's frequency. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's what makes this so maddening. You've probably already experienced this frequency yourself. There have been moments, maybe brief, maybe longer, when everything just clicked. You weren't stressed. You weren't forcing anything. You were just in flow. And during those windows, synchronicities stacked up so fast, it stopped feeling like coincidence. You thought of someone and your phone rang. You needed specific information, and a conversation later that day handed it to you. You were worrying about money, and an unexpected check arrived. Has this ever happened to you? Of course it has. Everyone's touched this state at some point. But here's the problem. It never seems to last. One week you're riding this wave of effortless manifestation, and the next week you're back to pushing, striving, wondering what the hell happened to that magic. You can't figure out how to get back there, and you definitely don't know how to stay there. Most people think those moments were flukes, lucky breaks, random good fortune. But Shinn understood something crucial. Those weren't accidents. You weren't randomly blessed by the universe. You temporarily aligned with a specific frequency, and reality responded exactly as it's designed to. The real tragedy is that most people never learn how to consciously access this frequency. They stumble into it by accident, enjoy the ride while it lasts, then tumble back out without understanding what shifted. So they spend years trying to recreate that feeling through external means, working harder, planning better, trying to control more variables, never realizing that none of that changes the fundamental signal they're broadcasting. Stay with me here, because what you're about to discover might completely shift how you understand why things have or haven't worked out for you. The frequency you're operating on right now isn't fixed. It's not determined by your circumstances or your history or how much money is currently in your account. But it is being shaped by something you do have control over, once you understand how the mechanism actually works. So why does this frequency keep slipping away from you? Why can't you hold on to it once you've found it? The answer reveals something most people find uncomfortable to admit. You never actually understood what created that alignment in the first place. It wasn't something you did consciously. It wasn't a technique you applied or a decision you made. You drifted into it. The same way you might accidentally stumble into a warm current while swimming in the ocean. It felt amazing while it lasted, but you had no idea how you got there or how to get back once it was gone. This is the hidden truth behind every frustrating cycle you've experienced. That week, when everything clicked, when money showed up effortlessly, when the right people appeared at the perfect time, when solutions materialized before you even fully articulated the problem. You weren't doing anything special on the surface. You weren't working harder. You weren't using some secret formula. What actually happened was a temporary alignment between two forces that are always operating within you, whether you're aware of them or not. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. I create content for people who want real depth, not surface-level advice. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Florence Scovel Shinn identified these forces as the conscious and unconscious mind. But what she really uncovered was something far more practical than most people realize. Your conscious mind is what you're aware of right now. The thoughts you're deliberately thinking, the intentions you're setting, the goals you're pursuing. It's the part of you that watches this video and decides whether to believe what I'm saying or dismiss it. But running underneath all of that, like an underground river you can't see but that's shaping the entire landscape above it, is your unconscious mind. And here's where the mechanics get fascinating. Your unconscious isn't just storing memories or processing emotions in the background. It's actively broadcasting a signal based on patterns you've repeated so many times they've become automatic. These patterns are composed of habitual thoughts you don't even notice anymore, and words you speak without thinking. Every single one of those thoughts and words carries a specific vibration, and that vibration is what reality actually responds to. Not your wishes, not your conscious intentions, but the signal your unconscious is transmitting on repeat. This is why two people can want the same thing, take the same actions, follow the same strategies, and get completely different results. One person's unconscious is broadcasting certainty, alignment, worthiness. The other person's unconscious, despite their best conscious efforts, is broadcasting doubt, resistance, a deep-seated belief that things never really work out for them. Reality doesn't care about fairness or effort. It responds to frequency with absolute precision. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because understanding how this actually works changes everything. The reason you keep losing that magical state isn't because the universe is fickle, or because you're not spiritual enough, or because you need to meditate more. It's because there's a split happening inside you that you haven't learned to recognize yet. Your conscious mind is pulling in one direction, toward what you want, toward abundance, toward success, while your unconscious mind, shaped by years of conditioning and repeated patterns, is pulling in the opposite direction. And when these two forces are in conflict, when they're broadcasting contradictory signals, reality gets confused. It can't deliver what you're asking for because you're essentially saying yes and no at the same time. The transformation happens the moment you stop treating this like some mystical, untouchable process and start seeing it for what it really is: a direct relationship between your inner state and your outer experience. The mechanics aren't complicated once you see them, but seeing them requires brutal honesty about the actual signal you've been sending versus the signal you think you've been sending. Most people never bridge that gap because looking at it directly means confronting patterns they've been running their entire lives without question. If you're starting to see where your own frequency might be working against you, write in the comments, "I see the pattern now." Let me tell you something that might sound strange at first, but once you grasp it, everything about why your life looks the way it does right now will suddenly make perfect sense. There are laws operating in your reality that are just as consistent and unbreakable as the law of gravity. You don't see gravity, you can't touch it, you can't negotiate with it, but drop something and it falls every single time. The laws governing how consciousness shapes reality work exactly the same way. They're invisible, they're impersonal, and they're absolutely relentless. These forces don't take weekends off. They don't pause while you sleep. They don't care if you're having a good day or a terrible one. Right now, as you're watching this, they're responding to the signal you're transmitting, not the signal you wish you were sending, not the signal you think you're sending. The actual signal, the one being broadcast from the depths of your unconscious mind, shaped by every habitual thought pattern you've been running on autopilot, and every phrase you repeat without even noticing. Here's where most people get tripped up, and it's such a subtle trap that you can spend years stuck in it without realizing what's happening. You desperately want something. Let's say it's financial freedom. You think about it constantly. You visualize it. You set intentions. You might even say affirmations in the mirror every morning. On the conscious level, you're absolutely committed to this transformation. But then you check your bank account, see it's lower than you'd like, and immediately, without even realizing you're doing it, you think, "I'm so broke. This is never going to change." That thought feels harmless. It feels like just acknowledging reality. But what you're actually doing in that moment is broadcasting a frequency of lack so powerfully that it drowns out every positive intention you set that morning. And because reality doesn't respond to your wishes or your hopes or your conscious goals, but only to the signal you're actually transmitting right now, it mirrors that frequency of lack right back to you. More bills arrive. The raise doesn't come through. The opportunity falls apart at the last minute. If this resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps more people find content like this when they're searching for real answers. You're not being punished. You're not unlucky. The universe isn't ignoring you. What's happening is far more mechanical than that. There's a fundamental mismatch between what you're consciously asking for and what you're unconsciously broadcasting. And when there's a mismatch like that, reality can't deliver, not because it doesn't want to, but because it operates on resonance. It can only give you what matches the frequency you're holding. Think of it like trying to tune into a radio station. If you want to hear the station broadcasting at 95.5 FM, you can't set your dial to 101.3 and then complain that you're not hearing what you want. The station at 95.5 is broadcasting just fine. It's available. It's there. But you're tuned to the wrong frequency, so you can't receive it. Your desires work exactly the same way. Everything you want already exists as a possibility, as a potential reality. But if the frequency you're holding through your habitual thoughts, your automatic words, your underlying emotional state, doesn't match the frequency of what you're asking for, there's no connection, no resonance, no delivery. This is the hidden truth behind every delayed manifestation, every frustrating almost but not quite moment, every time you've gotten close to something you wanted only to watch it slip away at the last second. It's not about worthiness. It's not about timing. It's about frequency mismatch. And the most devastating part is that most people have no idea they're creating this mismatch because they're so focused on their conscious intentions that they never examine the actual signal their unconscious is broadcasting moment by moment. What Florence Scovel Shinn understood, and what separates people who consistently manifest what they want from people who struggle, is that you have to go beneath the surface. You have to become aware of the automatic patterns running in the background, the ones you've repeated so many times they feel like truth, like just the way things are. Those patterns are the real architects of your reality, and until you bring them into conscious awareness and deliberately shift them, nothing changes. You can set intentions until you're exhausted, but if the foundation, the unconscious frequency, stays the same, your results will stay the same too. If this is starting to click for you, if you're recognizing the mismatch in your own life, drop in the comments. I'm ready to shift frequency. So here's where this gets incredibly practical, and honestly, a little uncomfortable when you first see it clearly. Your frequency, this signal you're broadcasting every moment, isn't some abstract mystical thing floating around in the ether. It's built from two very specific, very tangible elements that you're using right now, whether you realize it or not. The first is your thoughts, specifically the mental images you play on, repeat in your mind. The second is your words, what comes out of your mouth and what you whisper to yourself when no one else is listening. These two forces are supposed to work together like instruments in an orchestra, creating one coherent sound. But for most people, they're completely out of tune. Your thoughts are pulling in one direction while your words are broadcasting something entirely different. And the result is chaos. It's like trying to drive a car with one foot pressing the gas pedal and the other foot slamming the brake at the exact same time. You're creating friction, resistance, and going absolutely nowhere, despite all the effort you're putting in. Let me show you exactly how this plays out, because I guarantee you've done this without even catching yourself. You wake up in the morning, genuinely committed to change. Maybe you've been working on your mindset, reading the right books, consuming content like this. You spend a few minutes visualizing abundance, seeing yourself living the life you want. That's the thought component. That's the mental movie you're intentionally creating. And in that moment, your frequency is aligned. You feel good. You feel ready. But then you go about your day and someone asks you to grab lunch or contribute to something, and without thinking, completely automatically, you say, "I can't afford that right now." Or maybe you're talking to a friend and they mention an opportunity and you immediately respond with, "That would be amazing, but I'm not in a position to take that on." Those words just slipped out. You didn't even plan them. They felt natural, like you were just stating facts about your current reality. But here's what Florence Scovel Shinn understood at a level most people never grasp. Words are not neutral. They're not just sounds that evaporate into thin air the moment you speak them. Every single sentence that leaves your mouth is a command. It's an instruction you're giving to your unconscious mind, and your unconscious mind is shockingly obedient. It doesn't question you. It doesn't fact-check what you're saying. It doesn't evaluate whether your words are helpful or harmful. It simply accepts them as truth and immediately begins rearranging your reality to match them. Think of your words like seeds you're planting constantly in the soil of your future. You don't see the sprout the moment you plant a seed. It takes time to grow beneath the surface. But make no mistake, that seed is working. It's taking root. And eventually it breaks through the ground and becomes your lived experience. When you say, "I'm always broke," you're not just describing your current bank account. You're programming your unconscious to keep creating situations that confirm that statement. When you say, "Nothing ever works out for me," you're instructing reality to organize itself around that expectation. The most devastating part is how automatic this has become for most people. They don't even hear themselves anymore. They've repeated these limiting phrases so many times. "I never catch a break. I'm terrible with money. I can't seem to find the right person. This always happens to me." That these statements feel like observations rather than programming. But your unconscious doesn't distinguish between observation and instruction. It takes everything you say as a directive and faithfully executes it. This is the hidden mechanism behind why people stay stuck in the same patterns year after year, despite genuinely wanting change. They're trying to shift their thoughts, they're visualizing different outcomes, they're setting intentions. But then their habitual language, the words they speak without thinking, is constantly reinforcing the old frequency. And when there's that kind of split between what you're consciously trying to create and what you're unconsciously programming through your words, the unconscious always wins because that's where your real frequency lives. The transformation starts the moment you become the guardian of what leaves your mouth, not obsessively controlling every word in some rigid, exhausting way, but simply becoming aware enough to catch yourself when you're about to speak limitation into existence, and then making the conscious decision to choose different words, words that align with where you're going rather than where you've been. If you've caught yourself speaking your struggles into reality without realizing it, write in the comments, "I choose different words now." But words are only half of the equation. There's another force working behind the scenes that's even more powerful, and most people are completely unaware of how they're using it against themselves every single day. I'm talking about the mental pictures you run on, repeat in your mind. Those internal movies you watch over and over without realizing you're directing your own future. Florence Scovel Shinn called imagination the bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind. And this isn't poetic language. It's the actual mechanism. Every image you hold in your mind, every scenario you rehearse mentally, your subconscious receives as an architectural blueprint. It doesn't evaluate whether these pictures are good for you or whether they're what you actually want. It simply takes them as instructions and begins constructing your reality to match them. So if you spend your mental energy replaying scenes of rejection, rehearsing conversations where things go wrong, visualizing yourself struggling, failing, being embarrassed, or disappointed, your subconscious doesn't interpret that as worry or fear, it interprets it as a request. You're essentially handing it blueprints and saying, "Build this," and it will. Faithfully, precisely, without question. This is why some people seem cursed by bad luck, when really they've just been unconsciously programming the same negative outcomes for so long that their subconscious has become an expert at manifesting them. They wake up anxious about money, and immediately their mind floods with images of bills they can't pay, conversations with creditors, that sinking feeling of checking their bank account. They're not trying to create more financial struggle, they're genuinely worried about it. But worry and visualization are the same thing to your unconscious mind. Both are vivid mental pictures, and both get built. The shift happens when you start treating your imagination like the powerful tool it actually is. Instead of letting it run wild with worst-case scenarios, you deliberately feed it different blueprints. You close your eyes and see yourself living in the fulfillment of your desire, not as some distant fantasy, but as something present and real. You don't just glance at these images, you step inside them. You feel the texture of that reality. You notice the details. What are you wearing in this version of your life? What sounds surround you? How does your body feel when you're no longer carrying that burden you've been dragging around? The more familiar these mental pictures become, the more your subconscious accepts them as real. And what the subconscious accepts as real, it begins manifesting in the physical world. This isn't magic, it's psychology. It's how your mind was designed to work. But here's where most people hit another invisible wall, and it's so subtle that they can spend years stuck here without seeing it. They start doing the inner work. They guard their words. They shift their mental pictures. They're genuinely committed to this transformation. But then they make one critical mistake. They wait for proof before they feel grateful. They tell themselves, "I'll be grateful when the money shows up. I'll celebrate when the relationship materializes. I'll feel abundant once I see it in my bank account." And this seems logical, doesn't it? Why would you feel grateful for something you don't have yet? But this is exactly backwards, and it's the reason the manifestation stays perpetually out of reach. Gratitude isn't a response you give after receiving. Gratitude is the signal that shifts your frequency to reception. When you say thank you for something before there's physical evidence, you're not being delusional or engaging in toxic positivity. You're doing something far more strategic. You're broadcasting a frequency of already having, and reality responds to that frequency by delivering the physical manifestation. This is the hidden truth that collapses time between wanting something and receiving it. Most people stay stuck in the frequency of waiting, of hoping, of wishing it would hurry up and arrive. That frequency keeps you in a perpetual state of not yet having, and reality mirrors that right back to you. But when you shift into genuine gratitude before you see proof, you're telling your unconscious mind and reality itself, "This is done, this is mine, I'm no longer in a state of lack." And that certainty creates the opening for reality to respond. If you're ready to stop waiting and start receiving, write in the comments, "I'm grateful now." If you made it all the way here, I already know something about you. You're not someone who settles for surface-level answers or quick fixes that sound good, but don't actually work. You're genuinely ready for this shift, and that alone tells me you're already tuning into something different than most people will ever access. The fact that you invested this time to understand how frequency actually operates, how your words and mental pictures are constantly programming your reality, how gratitude works as a signal, rather than a reward, that's not casual interest. That's readiness. And readiness is what creates transformation. If this resonated with you, if something clicked while you were listening, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps me understand that this message is landing where it needs to, and honestly, it helps other people find this content when they're searching for real answers instead of empty promises. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, This is the moment. I'm creating content, specifically for people who want to understand the actual mechanics behind how consciousness shapes reality. Not the fluff, not the oversimplified version, but the principles that work when you apply them. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because we're going even deeper into these topics. Drop a comment right now saying, "This message found me at the right time. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know this reached you exactly when you needed it." And there's another video right here that builds directly on what we just covered. It goes into the next layer of this frequency shift, the part that most people miss even after they understand the basics. Click on it and continue this journey with me over there. I'll see you in the next one.